Hi, welcome to the SYMBAROUM RPG Character Creation Guide. Character creation in SYMBAROUM is very free. There are very few restrictions. You could nearly say no restrictions at all. You can mix and match things how you see fit. There are no classes, there are no careers, nothing really forcing you into a specific direction. You can at any time choose to back off from a direction you were going with a character and spend your experience points in a different direction. However, in character creation, the huge amount of options that you have might actually be a little tricky to get a hang on, especially for people who have never created a character in SYMBAROUM before. And that is exactly where this video comes in. So let's go through the basic steps, step by step, that you will need to follow to fairly successfully create your first SYMBAROUM character. Now, the SYMBAROUM core rulebooks has a number of so-called archetypes. They are not classes, they are not restrictions at all. What they are is basically suggestions. Suggestions about combinations of attributes and abilities that you can choose for your character to achieve a specific result, or a interesting combination. So maybe you're looking to create a heavily armored defender character, then you might want to go with a knight archetype. The archetypes are loosely divided into three groups. You have the warriors, you have the mystics, and you have the rogues. The names of these groups are fairly self-explanatory. You have the ones that are mostly heavily armored and excel in melee combat. You have the characters that are more focused on the arcane arts, so to speak. And you have the ones that are slightly beyond the reach of the law, a bit more stealthy, liars, deceivers and such. And a lot of ranged attackers, I guess, also in that category. But again, the archetypes are only suggestions. They are not classes that you need to follow at all. Let's take a closer look at the archetypes for the warriors. So you have 5 different archetypes suggested. You have the berserker, the duelist, the sellsword, the captain, and the knight. These are 5 different types of warriors. But they are just suggestions, once again, so you can be a little bit of a knight and a little bit of a berserker at the same time if you can fit it into your background and if you want to play something like that. And you have enough experience points to buy all those things. Now, after you have taken a close look at a archetype and you have chosen one of them, you will see that the archetypes have suggested race, suggested highest attributes, and also suggested abilities. I would suggest that you follow, for your first character, most of those suggestions, except for maybe the race suggestion, because that's really more of a background choice. And sometimes it's fun to make something like an ogre knight, or something that doesn't really quite fit. So if you want to play something like that, feel free to do so. Your first step after looking at the archetypes is to choose your attributes. There are 8 attributes, and they are the most important part of your character in SYMBAROUM. I don't want to go through all the 8 attributes once more. I have done so in my introduction to the rules of SYMBAROUM video, which you can find right up here. Instead, I will tell you that you have 80 points that you can divide amongst those 8 attributes. None of the attributes in character creation can be raised above 15, and none of the attributes can be lower than 5. Again, check the archetype suggestions. So for instance, if you are playing a knight, the book suggests that you would want to have strong 13 plus and quick 13 plus. So your 2 highest stats should be strong or quick. Once you have determined your 8 attributes, you can use them to determine your pain threshold, your corruption threshold, and your toughness. Yeah, the toughness is easy. That's just as much as your strong attribute. So if you have 12 strong, your toughness is 12, and your toughness is basically your health in SYMBAROUM. However, your toughness can never sink below 10. So even if your strong attribute is below 10, your toughness will stay at 10. Your pain threshold is your toughness halved, which is rounded up. Your corruption threshold is your resolve halved, which is also rounded up. The second step in your character creation is choose a race for your character. There are 4 races to choose from in the basic rulebook of SYMBAROUM. You have humans, which are further subdivided in the Ambrians, the civilized humans that come from the south, and the barbarians, the not so quite so civilized humans that have been living in these lands for a long time. Then the other choices are goblins, which are very short-lived, hyperactive little buggers, quite funny in some ways and quite dangerous in others, or ogres, big brutes that come from the depths of Davokar forest without memory. They do not know where they come from, and they are often adopted into human or goblin families. And changelings, which are elven children that have been exchanged for human children. So once you have chosen your race, think a little bit about your background and choose the trait, or pick up the trait that your race gives you. A trait is kind of like an ability. It's a special power that your race gives you. Sometimes you can choose to pick one or choose to pick another one, and sometimes you just get one or several traits from your race. Third step, maybe probably the second most important after your basic attributes, is picking your abilities. Every ability in SYMBAROUM has a novice, adept, and a master level. At the start of character creation in SYMBAROUM, you are allowed to pick 2 novice level abilities and 1 adept level ability. Or you can remove the adept level ability and instead take 3 more novice level abilities, which brings you to 5 novice level abilities. Again, there are a lot of abilities, and you by no means are required to read all of them at the start before or while making your first character. Instead, again, look at the suggestions at the archetypes and follow some of those. For instance, coming back to our knight character that we mentioned before, the knight suggests Iron Fist, Bodyguard, Man-at-Arms, and Two-Handed Force. Those are all abilities you can take at novice or adept level at the start of your character creation. Some abilities give you starting equipment. For instance, the Man-at-Arms ability lets you start with a medium armor for free. Don't forget, there is a list on page 78 of the core rulebook that shows you all those abilities that give you specific starting equipment. Also, don't forget that if you learn spells as some of your abilities, you get corruption points for these spells. Usually it is 1 point of permanent corruption for your character for every spell that he or she has learned, unless you have an ability that protects you from taking that corruption, which, for instance, the witchcraft or the wizardry ability do. The 4th point in character creation is your equipment. If you have not taken any of the abilities that give you free equipment, you start with the following: light armor, a dagger, and then either a staff, a ranged weapon, or a one-handed melee weapon. You also start with 5 thaler, so 5 gold coins, and that you can spend on other equipment if you want to, or keep for now. If you have the privilege trait, which Ambrian characters can get, you instead start with 50 thaler. So you're a little richer and you can afford a little better equipment at the start. If you have the pariah trait, which goblins and ogres can have, you start with only 5 shillings instead of 5 thaler, so 5 silver coins instead of 5 gold coins, which is not a lot of money at all. And then your very last thing you need to do is to calculate your defense stat. Your defense stat is the stat that you will be using to defend yourself from attacks. It is usually done by taking your quick attribute and subtracting from it any type of armor penalty that you might have. Unless you have, again, abilities that allow you to use another stat. For instance, the Sixth Sense ability allows you to use your Vigilant attribute instead of your Quick attribute for calculating your defense. However, most characters will use Quick minus armor penalty, and that will be their defense. I hope that was helpful for you guys if you were about to create your first SYMBAROUM character. In our next video, which we will be releasing in a few days, we will be creating actually a SYMBAROUM character following those very steps that we just presented here. And let us know what kind of character, what kind of archetype you would like to see. Do you want to see more of a roguish character, or maybe a mystic character, or maybe more of a warrior character? in this video that we will be releasing in a few days. And until then, stay safe, have a lot of fun with SYMBAROUM, and don't get too attached to your character, especially if you're playing a mystic, because the chances that you are not gonna make it are fairly high, all in all. Especially if you play in my games. Anyway, good luck in your games, and I will see you around.